CUPRA have been doing some really cool things in the last couple of years. The Bourne has been one of my favourite small EVs, and being part of a Volkswagen group means they can avail of the chassis from other cars. So this is essentially an ID4 with some really nice styling. It's called the Tavascan, and in this video we're going to talk about 5 things you need to know about it. Let's begin by talking about prices and specs. So prices start a little bit under 50,000 euros and you actually get quite a lot for it. Spec wise, this here is an Endurance 4 and that is essentially the entry level and has almost everything you could need except for heated seats. Now there's a winter pack which gets that and a few other things, including a heat pump for about 1,700 euro, and that's worth specing. Now in terms of the other specs, there's Endurance 6, 7, then there's the VZ 8 and 9 and the VZ 10. Costs upwards of 75,000 euros, but comes with a lot more power and loads of bells and whistles. Next up is engines, or electric motors and battery sizes, because this is a fully electric car. Now we mentioned earlier it's built on the same platform as the ID4 and the Skoda Enyaq, which is a good thing because it gets the 77 kilowatt hour battery. That means it has a range of up to 568 kilometers, which is brilliant. However, there's a few different versions in terms of power output, because those Endurance 4, 6 and 7s, they have 286 brake horsepower, which is quite a lot. But the VZ, that has 340 brake horsepower, which is absolutely loads. And it is worth noting, if you go for the VZ10 with that extra power, you're going to have probably under 500 kilometers range. So the interior, if you've been in any CUPRAs before or even any Volkswagen Group cars, it's somewhat familiar, particularly the steering wheel if you have been in a CUPRA. Really nice, easy to use. There's still the haptic feedback buttons, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but you get used to them, I suppose. There's a 5-inch display over here ahead of you, which gives you all your information. And then here you have this whopper 15-inch screen. It is brilliant. It's actually been improved a lot. So one of my favorite things is these now illuminate at night, so you know what you're doing with the climate control or the volume, which previously they didn't. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto connects up. The system itself, it's really quick, it's easy to use. You really can't go wrong with it. The actual interior itself, you have those lovely CUPRA seats. They're really comfortable and they also look the part. You've got this spine, they're calling it here. I think it looks like a bullhorn, which is quite cool. Some small enough cup holders down here, a bit of storage in there. There's also wireless charging down there. As a whole, it's a lovely cabin to sit. It's familiar, it's good, it works, and you will be really happy in here. Next, I want to talk about the boot and practicality, but before I do, just take a moment to admire how gorgeous it is. It does look class. I actually really like the spoiler, but I do think the front is my favourite. Now the boot, in here you've got 504 litres. It's actually really big and very spacious. Loads of room to put things in. There's a little bit of storage in there for some chargers. The seats fold in a 60-40 split. And what's more is there's 3 ISOFIX points in this car, 2 in the rear and 1 in the front passenger seat, which is really handy. So to drive, well, it does feel in many ways quite familiar, particularly if you've been in any ID4, Skoda Enyaq or any of the cars along that group. However, there are a couple changes, one of the biggest of which is when you come to regenerative braking, because this is the first ever Volkswagen Group with paddles to adjust the regen. And I love regenerative braking. As we come up here now to a stop sign, I don't really have to use the brake. I just slow right down and you find yourself just kind of balancing between having your foot on and off the accelerator. That obviously reduces wear in brake pads, but also you just become really accustomed to it, which is lovely. Another thing that I have to show appreciation to is this large 15-inch screen. Lots of manufacturers who primarily build left-hand drive cars almost build it for right-hand drive as an afterthought. However, here in the CUPRA Tavascan, this actually faces me. I was kind of a bit apprehensive because I'd only seen left-hand drive ones and I knew that that always faced the passenger or the driver in that scenario, but thankfully they have adjusted it for the Irish market. Now the reality is most of your driving is going to be kind of around town on the motorway, nice conservative driving, but if you put your foot down, even in this lower brake horsepower one that is 286 brake, it still is pretty quick and enjoyable to drive. And what's more is, for me, it's the right size. It's not too big. Some SUVs now are getting too big for parking spaces, for driving on Irish roads, but this is kind of that perfect point of being large and in charge, but not being too big that you actually find it a little impractical. That's 5 things you need to know about the new CUPRA Tavascan. And it's safe to say that it's a very good looking car. It's enjoyable to drive, and the range is pretty decent too. Now, my pick of the bunch would be to go for the Endurance 4 and maybe spec the winter pack, because some heated seats would be quite nice. Now, if you do have any questions, feel free to comment below, and a big thanks to Bradys of Castleknock, who supplied us with the car today. If you'd like to see what they have in for stock, you can hit the link up there. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.